My name is Whitney Moore. I'm the Executive Director of the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce, the greatest chamber of commerce in the history of the world. Thank you for coming to the West Seattle Chamber's Government Advocacy Public Safety Roundtable. I have a few announcements. The funding for this event was provided by the City of Seattle Office of Economic Development's Neighborhood Economic Recovery Fund. We're trying to get a longer name for that, so we're in the works. If you have any suggestions, please send those over. So thank you to the City of Seattle. I'd like to thank a few of our premium chamber members: Dan Wiseman, Hughes Media Law Group, Signal Security of South Puget Sound, and our gold members: Benefit Solutions Northwest, Duwamish Tribal Services, Home Street Bank West Seattle, Nucor Steel Seattle, Port of Seattle, Quill Park Memory Care Residencies of West Seattle, Seattle Auto Licensing, South Seattle College, Staples Westwood Village, Verity Credit Union, and White Center Glass. So thank you to our premium chamber members. Now we'll get right into our program. Thank you to our guest speakers for this evening. Thank you so much for being on this panel. I would like to introduce each of our panelists by reading from my notes that I have here. So bear with me. Chief Adrian Diaz, my new boss, because I'm now police officer,
sworn in.
Has been with SPD for more than 20 years. After a long stint in serving as interim chief, Chief Diaz was officially promoted to the position, or appointed to the position, by Mayor Bruce Harrell last fall. Congratulations. He began his patrol in the mountain bike unit and the anti-crime team before joining the Investigations Bureau. He served as assistant chief of the newly created Collaborative Policing Bureau prior to being promoted to the deputy chief. And Chief Diaz holds a BA in Criminal Justice from Central Washington University and Master's in Public Administration from the University of Washington. Thank you, Chief Diaz.
Thank you.
Next, our Councilmember Leesa Herbold. Leesa was elected to City Council in 2015, and she's a council member from District 1, representing the neighborhoods of West Seattle, West, and South Park. She's the chair of Public Safety and Human Services Committee, serves on other committees like Finance and Housing, Economic Development, Technology and City Light, Public Assets and Homelessness, and Transportation and Seattle Public Utilities. That is a lot. So thank you for being here and making time for this evening. She's also a resident of Highland Park and has lived here in September, 23 years. She's lived in the neighborhood, and we thank her for her service because she's recently announced that she will be retiring. So thank you, Leesa. And lastly, Attorney Leesa Manion. Leesa is newly elected. She just was appointed in November of last year. Prior to her role for the past 15 years, she served as Chief of Staff for the same office that she now holds the top seat for in the King County Prosecuting Office. She attended Seattle University for both her undergraduate education and law school. Not for your undergrad? No. Where did you go from that?
University of Northern Kentucky.
The University of Northern Kentucky. Go
Norse.
Norse.
We're not a lot of Norwegians there, but
Old school spirit for Northern Kentucky. She serves on the board of the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, and as a member of the Korean Prosecutors Association. She also lives here in West Seattle, the greatest neighborhood. Thank you so much for joining us, Leesa. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our moderator for the evening, Dan Austin. He's the past board chair of the West Seattle Chamber of Commerce, the co-chair of the Government Advocacy Committee, and is a local business owner. Take it away, Dan.
Hello, everybody. She already told you who I am. The owner of Peel and Press in the Morgan Junction, and recently also a co-owner of the Bridge in the Morgan Junction, and have been fighting for small business for quite a while here in this peninsula. Our committee here, the GAC, which I'm the co-chair of with my good friend Lindsay Wolpa over here. Our committee strives to be a bridge between the needs and concerns of the business community and elected officials and appointed officials that can help us achieve those goals. We do that by lobbying for policy that protects our small business community and providing educational and outreach opportunities to engage with those folks. Today, we will ask our panelists questions that were formed by our membership survey, and a lot of you responded to that. Now, you might not hear the exact verbiage that you put down, but we did group the questions together because there was some pretty common themes in there. We did our best to make sure, for the sake of time, we got all the questions asked in a tight fashion. We're here today to express concerns and learn about the system. To our panelists, we are grateful for your engagement with the Chamber. We know that you're taking time out of your personal schedules to be with us tonight. We see this as an opportunity to continue a constructive and respectful dialogue. As we continue to see increased... You saw that. Yeah, awesome.
I did see that.
We continue... who needs a word doc? As we continue to see increased issues in crime through harassment, smash and grabs, break-ins, we just, as a business community, we just have some frustrations, concerns, and we just want to learn what's going on and what we can do to help be part of the solutions to help out here. So what we have are our questions. We'll be asking a specific panelist a question and give up to 5 minutes for that panelist to respond. If I feel like another agency might need to jump in at the end to help bring some context to that, we'll give an additional minute or two for that to happen as well. Is there any questions on how this will work? Pretty simple. All right, well with that, let's get to it. Our first question is going to be for Chief Diaz. While we understand the priority of SPD is responding to violent crimes over property crimes, what is being done to deal with the seemingly escalating number of break-ins?
Well, you know, I know that everybody's been impacted by a lot of the break-ins, and over the last couple of years, we've seen that escalating type of crime, from burglaries to car prowls to a lot of theft that has been occurring. And so last year we were at kind of the all-time high when it came to overall crime, but specifically, roughly that property crime. We have seen a drop, and we're really trying to make sure that businesses report crime, reporting crime, because when we see a massive drop that we've seen over the last several months, and really this last 2 months, we've actually seen probably about, just in a month, 1,400 less reports in general offense reports. So it's really hard to put a strategy together when we're not getting maybe sometimes all of the accurate data that we need to be able to put that strategy together. So one of the things that, you know, we're really, first and foremost, you always start off with crime prevention. So Jen Danner, who's also in the audience right there, she actually does a lot of stuff as far as crime prevention, whether it's CEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. They're offering, stuff related to motor vehicle theft, which are the club type of objects to secure vehicles. But they also offer just suggestions on how to secure your business. So that's first and foremost. The second part is really about making sure that, you know, we establish what types of crime people are the burglaries, what types of crime they're involving. So a lot of people are involving sometimes property damage by people that are escalating behavior and people dealing with people in crisis. And that is a challenging issue for a lot of businesses. We were just chatting prior to this where somebody came in and threatened the employees, and officers eventually responded and were able to actually involuntarily treat the person to actually get them resources and services. But that's a very common theme that isn't just happening in West Seattle, it's happening all over the city. Is when we're dealing with people in crisis, it could stem from a burglary or a theft or a harassment, and it's escalating into a situation where employees are starting to feel scared to come to work. And so a part of that is we run personal safety workshops as well. We want to make sure that people feel safe at their business, and it's also then working with the prosecutor's office. So when we do have good cases, that we're actually prosecuting on many of these cases. We've been running some sort of. We've actually been doing operations on motor vehicle theft operations. Made a number of arrests on that. Working with the prosecutor's office, hopefully, that is really trying to make sure that they get in charge, because you're trying to change behavior. Then the second element is we're doing a lot of stuff on organized retail theft. Businesses that are impacted, Westwood Village is a great example, getting impacted by a lot of organized retail theft. Captain Rivera is actually in the audience as well, and I know that he's really trying to set up processes to make sure that we're doing a lot of operations to address those issues. So in general, it's really trying to make sure that we're pinpoint targeted to the issue that we're experiencing, what businesses that are impacted. When we also find is repeat locations. So what is a location that's generating multiple calls for service, such as like burglary. So when somebody says like I've been burglarized 3 or 4 times, like is there a reason why that business is being targeted? Is there something that's in that business of how they have it laid out that is actually making people say, I want that item, or the cash register is close to the door, or whatever that might be. is trying to find those processes and trying to figure out how to work with those businesses to reduce that potential burglary that's in progress.
I have two light redirects here. How do we get in touch with those programs like the environmental design and personal safety for employees, workshops like that? I see a hand wave, but for the audience here, what's our best resource to go around in engaging with that?
Yeah, so there's two things, and so if you're in the audience, like I said, Captain Rivera is the precinct captain. He's one part of the precinct in getting a lot of the sworn resources, but also the crime prevention coordinator Jen Danner is also really great for just getting the CEPTED, doing assessments, getting the women's personal. We have the women's personal safety workshops. So there's a variety of different things that she can offer, and really to businesses or to just even people just not associated with businesses. And so I would suggest if you can reach out to both of them. We also have other crime prevention coordinators. So we have 6 crime prevention coordinators that are throughout the city. Jen Danner is just the Southwest Precinct coordinator here, so she can focus in this area.
And one last one, because I heard you say it, and I've been preaching this for a while, and I just want to make sure people hear it clearly. So when we have something like a person in crisis or tagging or smaller violation that back in the day people might have called 911 about, at this point resources are light. Sometimes we don't think that maybe the police are the best to jump in with a mental health situation or whatever. What is the best way to make sure that we get you that information so you can track the data without maybe tying up 911?
So we actually have an online reporting system. Let me tell you, it's a little archaic. So and Councilmember Herbold heard me say this a little bit. It is right now the system that we have. However, we're actually working to rebuild a system. So we're working with a company, also working with 2 companies. One to actually do it in translation, so being able to be more responsive to a variety of different languages, but also do it where I'm hoping to have the system up and running by June. As you start to think about in the summer months, right now our system currently operates about 40% of our general offense reports. So it's a good way of being able to report stuff and being able for us to be able to track it and be able to have a good targeted plan to address those issues. But the idea is that in the summer months, we're going to have a variety of different events that are going to tap the city. So we've got Major League All-Star game that's going to come into town. We've got Pride, we've got 4th of July, we've got Torchlight, we've got Seafair. And so that is going to limit a lot of our resources. So we're trying to make sure that we're still capturing the crime data and being able to still be responsive to what the needs are that are going on in our communities. And so hopefully we'll have that operating before June, so we can go live and be able to be more responsive in different languages as well.
Yes.
Thank you so much. So glad to hear Chief Diaz talk about the online recording system. That is one of the things, and he said June, and we heard him say June. It's one of the things that's really important to me that we get fixed before the end of 2023. So it's on my high priority list of things to do, and really appreciate the opportunity to work with the department in helping to define the scope of what's most important to the community. I did want to mention, as it relates specifically to organized retail theft, that you may have heard me talk about the fact that Councilmember Lewis and I asked the city auditor to do an audit of both the city's approach to organized retail crime as well as other jurisdictions throughout the country, and we are expecting a report back the end of first quarter, and hopefully it will have some actionable recommendations for things that we can work together with the department to put into place as best practices. One of the things that we see with organized retail crime is that people are fencing goods, and sometimes fencing goods online. And so that's one of the issues that we're trying to look at, is how to reduce that market element of organized retail crime.
Do you mind if I just add something? Pre-pandemic, we had a Seattle police officer come and do one of the women's personal safety classes for women in our office. And hands down, women who attended found it very valuable. I also attended, and my life partner is a retired assistant police chief, and I also found it very valuable. There's a lot that can be learned just even by how you use your voice. And while everyone is aware of situational awareness, having like very specific things that you can do to kind of really put a fine point on that was really powerful. Also, with regard to the audit on organized retail theft, both the city attorney's office and my office participated in that. And one of the things that I appreciate about the audit is that look not just at the organized retail theft that we all see, the kind of go in, snatch and grab in some kind of organized way, but also the fencing. So it's really important to tackle both of those. And I'm sure I'll get a question on organized retail theft.
You can keep that microphone.
It
It won't be retail. But I think it's a question that actually I know you and I've had conversation about, and I think it'd be great for our membership to know. Between COVID restrictions and sentencing guidelines, the common narrative right now is that we're kind of in a catch and release situation. Can you explain sentencing guidelines? Because I know when we had a conversation, it was enlightening, and how other agencies in different levels of government have authority over that process.
Sure. So our sentencing guidelines are essentially our state laws on sentences for crimes. It's created by the Washington State Legislature, and we in the prosecuting attorney's office are bound by it, but we don't make the decision on sentences. Those are judicial decisions. Judges make those decisions. Now, how it interplays with the jail and some of the things that we were seeing during the pandemic. During the pandemic, we did have to reduce jail population, not just for the safety of the people who were incarcerated and detained in the jail, but also because our corrections officers guild demanded it in order to keep officers safe. So we are coming out of those restrictions. When I was the chief of staff, I did spend the early part of 2022 working with our mayor and our King County executive and our city attorney's office and Seattle Police Department to get the executive to ease up on some of the jail booking restrictions, and he agreed to do that. It was a great help to the city attorney's office as they were addressing their high utilizers initiative. So that's how those two things interplay. In the broader scheme of things, when someone is arrested, they are entitled to hearing within 24 hours. And it is the judge that makes the decision on whether to issue bail and whether to release someone or to keep them in detention. We make arguments, we make recommendations, and we're always very candid about that. Judges have to follow different rules, and they look at different factors, and they don't always make decisions that we agree with. So.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
And I would like to point out, a lot of judges run unopposed. So if you are upset about people getting bail or whatever, look at who you're electing to be judges. Or if you agree with them, keep electing them. But we should pay closer attention to who we're having make those decisions. Let's go down the line. Councilmember Herbold. Get her mic'd up. All right. Given the staffing shortages we have with SPD and the dialogue we had in 2020 around defund and subsequent council actions, which yes, a vote happened, but then never really took place, came back. So the 50% defund didn't happen. Do you believe that had a part of recruiting issues with the SPD officers and retaining officers? And what role does the council have in getting the city's police force back to an appropriate staffing level?
Yeah, just to be clear, we never voted on a 50% reduction. There were two motions, one by my colleague, Councilmember Swan. That motion failed for even getting a second. The second motion, there was a vote on it, but it was just an amendment, and it failed 8-1. So there was no successful vote to reduce the Seattle Police Department by 50% ever at any time. There's a lot of factors that go into the fact that we have, over the last 2.5 years, almost 3 years now, lost 500 officers at the Seattle Police Department. The fact that we were talking about reductions in the Seattle Police Department, I agree, was a factor. The difficulty for police officers at that particular time during protests was a factor. But this is a national issue, the issue of separations from the department and the difficulties around recruitment. A police employee,
Police Executive Research Report?
Yeah, that has found that that every city across the country has had large numbers of officers either retiring, in some cases retiring early, or quitting. And the recruitment numbers, again, in every city across the country are down. I think the numbers are, I don't have them in front of me. I've quoted them in my blog on many occasions. I'm happy to provide them, but it's really surprising. It's eye-opening. We had for every industry, both public and private workforces, it's called the Great Resignation. Every part of the workforce has experienced it, and we have to be nimble and creative on how we're going to address filling the vacancies that have been created over the last almost three years now. And we have been working with the department. Chief Diaz, in passing, mentioned the council enacted incentive program that actually provides a financial incentive for new officers coming to the department, and even larger incentive for officers coming from another department. I saw one of the questions that was sent, not to be jumping the gun, but whenever somebody has a good idea, it's always wonderful to be able to say, we did it. One of the ideas that I think was submitted by members of the public is, well, why not pay officers for referring successful candidates to the department? And so part of the recruitment and the recruitment bonus program includes, not just for police officers, but inclusive of police officers, a $1,000 bonus for anybody who successfully refers somebody who then becomes an officer in the police department. There's a lot of other things that the department has been doing, both in the area of changing its recruitment practices, how people are screened, how we process applications to speed up that process. Because often one of the things that happens is when, by the time there's an opportunity to join the academy, sometimes people have found other opportunities because of the length of time that it often takes to screen people's applications. So there's been a lot of work that the department's been doing in conjunction with the mayor's office, using the funding that the city council provided to do this work. I also wanted to say, in each the budget years for 2021 and 2022 and 2023, the city council, each of those 3 years, fully funded the staffing plan for the police department. And that's what the staffing plan, the hiring plan is, to fully fund it means to provide the maximum number of dollars that SPD believes it can spend to hire as many people that they believe that they can hire based on past practices. So I think it's really important that we're clear about the facts around the department's budget.
Perfect.
May
Anything?
I add something?
Yeah, let's go, Ben.
Okay, so just last Thursday, I was with the Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, the 35 most populous county elected prosecuting attorneys. And the police staffing issues are in every major jurisdiction in the United States. What Seattle has going for it is Chief Diaz and I have one another on speed dial. We reach out to one another all the time, and I know that he is also on Natalie Walton Anderson and Ann Davison's speed dial. And here's an example of why that matters. When you're down resources, you need to have a single point of contact, or single points of contact where you can reach out and get immediate response. And Chief Diaz and I were in a meeting, and he came up to me when they had arrested 2 prolific taggers in the city of Seattle. And the first thing he said to me is, I need your office to work hard to keep these individuals in jail. And we successfully did that. We coordinated with the Seattle City Attorney's Office. Most of those tagging crimes are misdemeanors. But because these 2 individuals had created so much harm, we were able to aggregate the value of damage, and we filed felonies against both of those individuals. So that's kind of the important thing that has changed in our community. When resources are down, we have to be more coordinated.
Actually, I couldn't agree more, and that's a great example. You know, especially when people go, oh, you know, these might be smaller crimes. but they have so much value to, or they have so much impact in our communities. You know, and one of the things that I've done a lot more is leverage our federal partners. So I have actually on speed dial with all of our federal partners, whether it's ATF, U.S. Marshals, and we're really being able to utilize all those resources, especially to address the fentanyl that's been impacted in our communities. And that is such a huge issue. When you look at it, you know, just literally 5 years ago when we recovered around 500 pills for the year, and last year over 1.1 million pills, enough to kill this entire city. It is just amazing just on how much influx of drugs, and that creates a huge impact for the community, because we're dealing with sometimes people in crisis, but adding the fentanyl on top of that is a whole nother dynamic. That's the reason why you find people in a very in a different kind of state where they're not able to sometimes control. Sometimes they become more assaultive, and we've had ups and downs of this. You know, when you look at about 10 years ago, when meth really kind of came up onto the market, it was really very difficult to really deal with people that are experiencing, you know, meth, experiencing the use of meth. And, you know, we figured out how to deal with that. But now fentanyl is the new drug. And I'm sure in a couple of years we'll end up finding some new drug that, you know, people will either mix with another drug. And so it's really trying to make sure at the end of the day that we're getting certain resources and services, but also being able for us on the federal or on the partner side is really utilizing all of our federal partners to be able to help us, you know, really tackle the problem with sometimes those that are really just trying to harm our community as well.
Yeah. So question for you, Chief Diaz. How do you think the Black Lives Matter movement has impacted the culture of SPD? Relatedly, since you've taken over the helm of the department, how have you addressed the core issues of the movement around officer mistreatment of citizenry?
Yeah, so that's actually a really great question, because you're really trying, you know, when I took over, you know, people talk a lot about culture change and, you know, really how do you figure out, how do you impact the level of the department? You want to make sure the department's accountable. You want to make sure that it's doing its job by, you know, addressing crime and disorder. You want to make sure that it's also, you know, being responsive to the community's needs, because, you know, a lot of our community wants to make sure that it's being, you know, given resources, you know, and that arrest isn't the only avenue to address the issues. So one of the things that I had done a lot of work in community. I spent a lot of time in South Park. I actually lived in West Seattle for probably about a good decade, and just over by Fauntleroy Church, and so when I was living there, I actually spent a lot of time in the community. So Danny Middle School, Chief South High School. I was actually a coach at Chief South High School for wrestling, and so when I was doing that work, I learned a lot from the schools, really understanding trauma informed care, and I took a lot of the knowledge that I had and built a program called SPD Before the Badge. So we actually take brand new recruits prior to the academy, bring them in for 45 days, and infuse them into, you know, one area of building up the resiliency of them, you know, the wellness of them. But it's also having community conversations, difficult community conversations that with communities that have been impacted by police violence. So we intermix them with, you know, the Black community, we intermix them with Native community, we intermix them with the Asian community, and literally have very, very difficult conversations. And it really helps them understand, like, this is the community I want to police, and then you become more mindful. So we also focus on social emotional learning and brain development. And this is the first of its kind in the country. And it really has already kind of, you know, taken off since May is when we first launched it. We've actually had every recruit since then that has gone through it. We're now in, I think, like the 15th cohort of our officers. But it really is the way I look at it is every officer will go through this. If we hire 125 officers over the next 5 years, that's 600 personnel. That means that over half this department will have been infused with this type of expectation of what we want from our police officer. But what's really important out of this is we focus on that level of culture change, but it has to start at the very beginning. When you start to look at right now, if you talk to London, you talk to Ireland, talk to Scotland, Peru, whatever country you can imagine, their academies are 1 year to 3 years long, and they don't give them a gun. Our academies are 4.5 months, and we give them a gun hoping that we're going to have a better outcome. It's just not possible. And so for me, it was like, okay, we're going to bring in SB before the badge. That's 45 days. That's a month and a half extra. Then they come in for 4.5 months of an academy. Then they're going to come into post-GUIA for another couple of months. So it's really trying to extend the amount of time that they have and what my expectations are. And people will talk a lot about, you know, the academy training people to be guardians versus warriors. But the problem is the academy still grades people on use of force. It still grades people on defensive tactics, how to shoot, how to drive fast, how to, you know, do all those different elements of it. But what does it grade people on how to interact with community? And so that's where SB before the badge really takes that place. And so this is really, to me, this is going to end up shifting the way our culture looks at it. When I look at just over the last couple of years, from 2019 to 2022, last year we made more arrests than we had when we had full staffing. We actually had recovered the second most guns that we had in 13 years that we started tracking. We actually reduced our use of force from 2015 by half, by 48%. And so that is a great marker. So it's great work by our officers. But then I looked at complaints, and we had about 900 and some complaints, about 960 complaints in 2019, and we were about 450. So we've reduced our complaints by half. And so that's really where you're trying to figure out, how do you get that culture change? You want to make sure you're holding officers accountable, but you know, when you're making that arrest, you're recovering that many guns, and seeing the complaints drop like that, that's the hope that you're actually trying to drive is that officers are going to do it right. They're going to do it, you know, in the most thoughtful manner, and they're using less force. And so that is really where we end up heading, and Leesa in the direction. So far, it's been positive. We're already starting off 2023 in a good place because we're seeing violent crime drop. We've actually, over the last 6 months, have seen like close to about 26 to 30% drop every single month in violent crime. And so, you know, if we continue to see those outcomes where crime is, you know, maybe potentially, especially violent crime, is dropping, that officers are doing it better, you know, it's going to have an impact over the next couple of years. So,
thank you. Let's go down the line. This question was actually for the city attorney's office, but I think I can pass it to you since you said you can jump in on this. Can you explain how coordination between the city attorney's office and the King County prosecutor's office works?
Oh, sure. This is a great question for both offices. So the relationship between city attorney's office and my office has never been stronger. So not only do Ann and I talk and meet on a regular basis because we're setting the culture and the expectation for the office, we also have the lead of their high utilizers initiative and our high-level prolific offender team that meet and talk every single day. They pick up the phone, they call each other, and we're trading information not just on individuals who are committing repeat crimes, but also the individuals who are cycling in and out of our care and treatment facilities, because we need to know what's going on there and what's happening there. I started this partnership with Ann, who's been a great partner, when I was chief of staff in 2022. And from January until the early part of fall, we actually drove down organized retail theft in the downtown core by 20%. We've all seen the video footage of individuals who walked in and they're sweeping perfume bottles and other merchandise into bags. A lot of those crimes are misdemeanors, but when we trade notes and we aggregate the value of the loss, we can take those to felony as additional accountability. The other thing we did, both offices worked together to train our loss prevention officers. A lot of the larger retail stores and chains have them. And while they can do a great job on the investigation, the final part of it, the referral, actually has to come from police, from law enforcement, because they have to sign it's called the certification of determination of probable cause. And that's where that single point of contact became so critical. Officers needed to know, who in the prosecuting attorney's office do I call when I have a question, or I want to know if this person received it. In my office, it's Nicole Lawson and Susan Harrison, so police officers know that. And so we started with the downtown core, and now we trade notes on all parts of the city of Seattle. It's been a great partnership. We also know, because Ann Davison shared this, she inherited an office of unfiled charges. We know that during a lot of the pandemic, misdemeanor crimes weren't being reviewed and they weren't being prosecuted. And she had to dismiss a lot of cases that had either reached the statute of limitations or were very near the statute of limitations. So that was just an additional challenge, and we saw that. We saw that in our communities. But our offices coordinate, the relationship's never been stronger.
Let's just go. Keep on going. All right.
Can I just say one quick thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Before the badge, I wanted to just flag for folks that the first of the Southwest Community Conversations that is actually part of Before the Badge is, I think it's, I might not say Monday, so I think it's today, isn't it?
It's right now.
It's right now. There will be more though. I think there's another one in Southwest later on in the spring. I just really encourage folks to get along. It's at, you can go to publicsafetysurvey.org to sign up.
I'll stick with
me.
Stick with you. Yeah. As the council public safety chair, do you have any planned legislation or budget items for 2023 that would support security or preventive measures against property crime for suffering small businesses? And I do want to thank the support we've had for the Window Recovery Fund. That's I know I've lost a lot of windows, but is there ways to maybe not get those windows broken in the first place? So is there any planned legislation to help out?
So, I know one thing that I mentioned earlier is that we're getting this, we're going to be getting a report from the city auditor on retail theft, and so there will be some recommendations in that report, and some of those recommendations might require legislative or budget acts, so that's sort of in the hopper, and we'll see on that. As far as things that Councilmember Nelson, who chairs the Committee on Economic Development, what she might have planned for increased support of businesses that are victims of crime. I'll certainly support that effort if there are more initiatives planned there. One of the things that I know a group of hotel businesses have recently come to me about is about the difficulty associated with insurance increasing. They have expressed an interest in using Visit Seattle, and Visit Seattle is, it's sort of like a BIA, a business improvement area, and they're looking at using that business improvement area as a way to provide basically a subsidy for people's insurance that has increased. I don't know if that's something that this particular BIA would consider. Another thing that I know that the DSA is doing for the Downtown Seattle Association. We were talking earlier about personal safety. They are making available their safety ambassadors to walk people, employees, to their vehicles or their transit, so folks feel more safe coming back to work, because particularly in downtown, personal safety is a real chicken or the egg thing. We need people to come to work in order for it to be a more safe environment. I don't know if that is, if the issue of personal safety is such here that people would be interested in having somebody help them get to their vehicle in a safe way. But again, we could always look at using the BIA as a mechanism to direct funding to the needs that this community identifies.
Okay. We got
I'm
Kristen
open
over
to
here.
do so.
Yes, we do.
Yes, awesome. Well, let's stick with you guys. One more question. We'll work our way back up here. Where are we at? We've talked about another public safety response outside of police. I just had a mental health issue. Not me. Someone in my business the other day. I know we've talked about creating. I know the response from the fire department we have kind of as a test launch right now. But where are we in legislation or programs moving forward in getting some mental health folks out onto the street to help address some of these issues?
So since 2020, the council has repeatedly provided funding to stand up an alternate 911 non-armed response for low-level acuity calls. We do, you're right, we do have Health One that is part of the fire department, but that is really for physical health responses, not so much when somebody purely has a behavioral health issue. The council has worked with the mayor's office as part of a work group to identify an objective of focusing on a particular subset of behavioral health calls as a pilot, and focusing on what are called person down calls and wellness checks. And we actually have a briefing in my public safety committee tomorrow with the Community Safety and Communication Center, formerly known as 911, for them to come and talk to us about their development of their new dispatch protocol, which is basically the foundation that makes it possible to refer a call to somebody other than SPD or the fire department. There's basically a decision tree that has to be part of the dispatch protocol, so they're going to come present tomorrow. But I will say I am very frustrated. Again, every year since 2020, we've been sort of socking money away in the executive departments to stand this up. I am very frustrated that we aren't further than we are. There are other cities who were able to stand up alternative responses during the pandemic. Denver took its STAR program, which used to be looked a little bit like our co-responder program, which was you'd have an officer and a social worker going out together in a car, which we currently have that model, but they evolved that model to a model where only the non-uniformed response is occurring. They've responded to thousands of calls and not needed an officer to come for backup. It's always important for our officers to have situational awareness of these calls, so in case they are needed. But Albuquerque is another city that has already stood up a new third department. So I'm hoping by having these periodic briefings in my committee that we can continue creating some momentum with the departments to get this up and running.
So I want to recognize the funding you put forward that's been pushed forward constantly. So it's in the executive's hands at this point, or for there for negotiations between departments, and that's where we're at? Okay. Excellent. A lot of us have been waiting, and thanks for keep funding it. Let's get it going. Let's go back up to
can I talk a little bit about mental health?
Yes,
mental
please.
health challenges that are facing our community. So, there are kind of three levels of our mental health crisis as I see it as a leader in this community. One are the individuals who are mentally ill and definitely need treatment so that the behavior stops. And we must figure out a way to meet the need and the size of the need in our community and offer treatment on demand. It shouldn't have to be someone brushing up against the law or committing a crime to get services. So that's one kind of important component piece. And funding will definitely help with that. Capacity will help with that. Another area is our involuntary treatment at court. This is something that is a long-term goal of mine. It's not something we can address right now because it may require a change in state law. Right now, when a crisis responder is called to the scene, they make a determination of whether to refer someone for an involuntary treatment act petition for 72-hour hold. That is right now a very contested proceeding. I have prosecutors who are working with hospitals and mental health professionals to keep someone in treatment against their will, and I take that very seriously. But on the other side of the table, I have public defenders that are fighting for the release that is often to nothing into the streets. My goal is to change our state laws, which haven't been updated in a very long time, and make that a more collaborative court where we have mental health professionals, judges, prosecutors, police, and defense attorneys working together to get someone help in the least restrictive means possible before they decompensate and commit crimes. The other benefit of having a therapeutic court is we have our mental illness drug dependency tax, which is therapeutic courts are an authorized expense. So if we could work together to change those laws, I think we would have better impact and better outcomes, and I think it's more humane to people who are in need of treatment. The final area, and these are people who have committed crimes, sometimes very serious crimes, and either the city attorney's office or our office has charged them with either a misdemeanor or a felony. But they have been deemed by a judge incompetent to stand trial, which means they don't understand the charges against them, and they are unable to participate in their own defense, which are both required, constitutional requirements. Western State Hospital, restoration of competency is a wholly state responsibility, and the Department of Social Health Services is simply not accepting people for competency restoration. Beds at Western State Hospital are full, and it has been, I will be honest, hard to get the attention of our governor and some of our lawmakers, and it could be very well because we're in session, but this is something that should be a priority for our state lawmakers. Happy to be a good partner, happy to be at the table and work towards solutions, but I don't control state dollars, and neither does the city, and this is something that's impacting all of us. So it's just something to have on your radar screen.
Didn't the county just sue the state of this?
We did, we have sued the state, we have sought sanctions, and that's to bring attention to the issue, but it's not going to resolve the issue. What we really need is an increase in capacity. One thing that
But you're creating the impetus.
Yes, well, we want people to be aware of this issue, but you know, we also want to come with solutions. So one of the things that state lawmakers could do is I think saw the article a few weeks ago that there are 400 individuals who are waiting to be licensed mental health professionals in our state, and their licensing is just kind of put on pause and put on hold. So can we expedite that? Could we get those individuals licensed? That would increase capacity. Could we bring in or offer incentives for out-of-state workers? Could we act with the same type of urgency that we saw in the early days of the pandemic?
And actually, this actually brings up because, so when I was assistant chief of the Cloudland Precinct, I had the crisis response unit. So we actually did a full flow chart that really looked at the incompetency to stand trial component. There's roughly about 1,500 to 2,000 people on any given time that kind of fits that criteria, and so this does become part of that high utilizer. But what ends up happening is when they're released from the jail, after we make an arrest, there's no services to them. And so this is really, and it's trying to figure out, like, it comes back to even setting up an alternative response. I was just meeting with Diaz, a Downtown Emergency Service Center, and they haven't been able to fill all their positions yet, even though, you know, and right now it takes a DCR designated crisis response 6 weeks to be able to evaluate somebody that is in need now. And so even though we've got like funding that's coming in, many of the services aren't able to actually meet their capacity because I think to this point, like, how do we actually get people that are trained and ready to be able to respond now? So trying to figure out how do you incentivize whether you bring people out. I met with the UW School of Social Work, and they're like, we're struggling to find people to take practicums, you know, and, you know, could you, you know, be able to take some people? And we're like, yeah, we'd love to, you know, because it's a need for us, you know, finding people to be able to do social work in our department and being able to respond out to call for service. We already have a history of it. We have our crisis response unit has mental health professionals. We have actually been working with Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion, or LEAD. We've been working with REACH and Just Care and many of our different programs. We have critical incident response that is, you know, having groups that are actually responding out to shootings that are community-based groups. I mean, we've got victim support teams. There are so many things that we've actually already done. So I don't want to not say that there hasn't been work done in alternative response, because there has been so much work that has been done. And right now, some of the organizations are just struggling to meet their own capacity to be able to build those programs up because they need people, but trying to find the right fit in those organizations are just not there as well. So this is going to be a long-standing problem, not just now, but I mean, when people say, like, you know, unemployment is 3.5% or 3% or whatever it is, I'm like, where does everyone go? Like, I don't understand it because there's so many jobs out there, and you know, whether people are working from home, but there's so much need in the community, and I just, you know, that's really just trying to find out where those people are. That, you know, we have jobs, there's so many areas where we can employ people, but it's just trying to find, you know, people to fill them.
It's, I'm glad you mentioned the people either waiting to get their licensing or transferring out of state. My wife works for a large medical organization, and they have nurses trying to transfer in, and they're short-staffed on nurses and mental health folks in there. And we don't have, Washington State doesn't directly accept licenses from a lot of other states. And so those people have to come through and get relicensed. And it takes months and months and months right now while people need treatment now. So, yeah.
And while every jurisdiction may have their challenges, I mean, I just heard about this last week from Salt Lake, Mecklenburg County, which is in Charlotte, North Carolina. I heard about it in Dallas. I heard about it in Ramsey County. I mean, we are all kind of struggling with some of the same issues, maybe for different reasons, but that's not reassuring to folks, but it's honest.
Well, I'd like to throw out same question to all of you guys. We've got a little over half hour, but we could wrap maybe a few minutes early, time. With this audience of businesses we have here, we've all struggled through COVID, broken bridge, and more. So many of us have just called it quits or feel like we're about to call it quits. What advice do you have that we can do to support these issues and to move these things forward? And some of these headwinds that we're still feeling right now, you know, continued break-ins after surviving COVID and economic loss from the bridge being shut and this, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? We're moving in the right direction, and what can we do to be part of that solution? What do you need from us as a business community?
You actually hear a lot of, for me, it's a lot about economic development, because if we can get businesses to be able to operate in every one of our communities, you're going to get more people out and about walking the streets, and that actually helps reduce crime. You know, being able to be much more present and visible is huge. When I start to think about, you know, people were talking about the downtown recovery, and I just had the opportunity to attend the convention center opening up, and you know, it's a whole bunch of like millions of square feet of people coming in, and you start thinking about, like, it's such a huge economic boost to the downtown. People go, gosh, you know, downtown's, you know, businesses are shutting down, it's quiet, no one's going to open up. You know, there's 7,000 rooms that are all within several block radius. You know, restaurants will start opening up. I go, when you start having, you know, a bunch of events, in 4 years we're going to have World Cup, and it brings close to $100 million worth of revenue into the city. You're gonna, this summer we're going to have All-Star Week, and that is going to bring huge levels of revenue into the city. People are going to visit all areas. They're going to come to Alki because it's such a huge attraction. I mean, you right now there's a moving industry really trying to highlight what Seattle has to offer and show this and highlight movies so people can come and visit all sorts of areas of Seattle. All of that is really a part of just inspiring people to actually come and visit and actually spend money and being able to open up businesses and being able they're just, to me, it's just such a huge opportunity right now. But we're at the ground level, and right now I know it sucks just because, you know, everyone's had to endure it for the last couple of years. But this is really an opportunity to really be able to grow something that's even bigger than us. And I think we just got to just be able to hold on for just a little longer. I mean, the way I look at it, we're hiring, you know, our hiring this year has been actually really, really good. Our crime rate is starting to look a lot better when it comes to violent crime. People have been expressing to me that they feel safer when they're walking down the street. I know it's still rough. I know that it's still challenging for people. But it's like maybe there's a glimmer of hope that maybe we're going to get through this, you know. And there's still going to be rough roads ahead, but at least maybe we'll be able to achieve what we want to achieve in the city.
You know, much like Chief Diaz, I think there is a lot of hope. I think our communities look very different than they did a year ago. I know that we have fewer people living in vehicles, we have fewer tents in our streets and in our communities. And I also know that we've all come through something really hard, and sometimes it's really hard when I'm downtown a lot. And I will tell you, the state of downtown looks different from day to day. Some days I go down and I think, wow, things look really good. And other times I go down and I'm like, oh, wait, what's this? Are things creeping back? And that's just me acknowledging that maybe I have my own kind of reflexive kind of concern and fear that things are going back downward or spiraling again. So I want to recognize that because it's very real and it's very human. And it's also true that I feel like the next day I'll come back and someone has moved that community into services, right? And removed the tents from the streets. And then maybe 2 days later it looks a certain way again. So we're in a state of flux, but I carry a lot of hope. I also carry a lot of hope because we have, as leaders in the community, been cooperating in a way that feels very different to me as someone who's been in the prosecuting attorney's office for 27 years. So I give that a lot of hope as well.
Thank you. So for the last 2.5 years, I've often referred to a quote of Chief Diaz that is like one of the best things I've heard as an explanation for the challenges that we've been experiencing. Chief Diaz used to say that social interaction is a perishable skill. Just think about that for a minute. Now, think about being in your house for 2 years and not having the opportunity to practice social interaction and how that affects people differently. Maybe it doesn't affect people in this room that differently, but there's a reason why we've had a spike in mental health crisis. It's the reason why we've had a spike in domestic violence, in road rage incidents, in suicides, in gun violence. And a lot of that is attributed to just not being able to practice how to be together. And I really do believe that we are, when we have our regular twice monthly meetings, we sometimes say what we don't say in public. It's probably the first time I'll say it in public, but I feel like we are turning the corner. I'm the council member representing District 1, not downtown, but I'm gonna refer to something I saw in a downtown report, just to, again, to illustrate how that could function in a similar way for our West Seattle and South Park businesses. As has been mentioned, downtown crime has the data shows a fairly significant decrease both in violent crime and in property crime over the last few months. The Downtown Seattle Association reported at the end of January that foot traffic was at 90% of pre-COVID levels. So it shows that there's a relationship there. As I think you've heard from all of us. There's a relationship between people getting out and using our public spaces in a productive, a non-destructive way. Relationship with reduction in crime, relationship with the survival of our business districts. And so I think if we continue with a collaborative approach and trying to address this sort of, again, a little bit of a chicken or egg situation, we are going to see that light at the end of the tunnel.
Well, I'll just do a light wrap up. I'll start with Councilmember Herbold, and that is just, as the West Seattle Chamber has worked with you for years, so thank you. I know you're stepping off council at the end of this year, but thank you for working with us and chatting with us and keeping communication open. We still got about 9-10 months left of chances to chat, but I just want to thank you for your years of service with the city. So. The other Leesa. Congratulations on the election. Did have a quick question on how's the staffing levels in your office? Are you guys able to move through things appropriately right now and with good speed, or are you guys still picking back up from the pandemic?
Well, we actually have some attorney vacancies, just like every other major jurisdiction in the United States. We're having a hard time bringing in lateral hires. We are having better success with our legal service professionals. We did receive some additional COVID relief funding to help tackle that backlog, and we are steadily working through it. While things aren't perfect, I feel like things are manageable, and I also am really proud of the professionals in my office who are really leaning into the work and working really hard.
Excellent. Well, welcome to the new position. Well, they work with you as well. Chief Diaz, officers have, we've lost, there's been, morale's been down a little bit, we've lost a lot, they're having trouble recruiting. And we all, I think as a community, we want the best officers available, and I know you guys are working to make that happen. How do we, as citizens, help hold the police accountable? What's our best route for communication on that? And also, what's the best thing for us to do to thank our officers when we see them? Like, what's gonna make them feel some love?
I'll start off with the second one first. Honestly, it's just a thank you. Officers that have stayed with us over the last couple of years, they're committed to this city. They want to see this city thrive. They want to see what's best for the city. They're already seeing really good numbers when it comes to just officer complaints being down, use of force being down, and still their work ethic is still achieving many great things, gun recovery, and just the amount of arrests that they're doing. And I'm also being more responsive to getting people into services. I mean, it's just, I'm watching stuff. I've been putting out different video clips of officers and just how they've de-escalated situations that literally maybe 10 years ago it would have probably resulted in an officer-involved shooting and a death. And it's just the patience that our officers are doing now is so much more than when I first started. I tell you that right now. It's literally just it's mind-boggling. But you know, we have a new generation of officers that I feel like are coming into this in this area. They're so much smarter than when I was, you know, coming into this job. They're technology savvy, and one of the things is really just trying to build their ability to communicate, because they use technology to communicate, and so literally just trying to, like, you know, really just get down to the dirty and just say, hey, this is how we talk to people. This is how we interact with people. And as Councilmember Herbold had noted, I talk about this as being, you know, this perishable skill. Like if you don't have it, you can learn how to develop it. You just got to make a conscious choice to be able to do that. And part of that comes in accountability. Like when officers know that, you know, how they interact with somebody, they're going to treat people that much better. And when they know that there's a level of discipline that's going to end up happening or imposed, they are going to make sure that they're mindful about what they say and how they do it. And we've seen it just based on the reduction in complaints. And I hope to keep that trend going. You know, I hope that even when we hire more officers, that it still stays low. And I think that the SVD before the badge will be really that first onset of really teaching our officers what we value in the city. So I think, again, it's still going to be a work in progress, but as we build up our ranks, it's huge. And I would be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to my mayor. I mean, he has really been a godsend in just trying to say, you know, Chief, I need you, you know, I need you to address some of these areas. I need you to address the 12th and Jackson. I need you to address 3rd Pine. I need you to address Westwood Village. I need you to address some of the different things that are going on throughout this city. And he's, you know, given me the latitude to be able to do it in a very thoughtful and mindful way. I've done a lot more stuff when it comes to, you know, really targeting operations rather than just saying, okay, arrest everything that moves. And because that really creates a huge issue with disparities in our stops. And so really being mindful about behavior and what we're doing to address that behavior is a lot more productive in the way we do policing, rather than really, you know, making it a us versus the community kind of mentality. And so it's just a change of philosophy that I think will hopefully permeate over the next several years.
Where do we send in either a compliment or complaint? Like if we had a great interaction with a police officer or a concern, where's the appropriate, you know, is that Twitter? Where do we send that to?
Not Twitter, not Twitter. But so when it comes to a complaint, we suggest people to go to the Office of Police Accountability, OPA, and they take accommodations. They do take accommodation. We actually are running a new system through Spider Tech that actually is when you call 911, it's actually a set of follow-up questions that you'll get a system that'll actually automate to you, call you back, and actually get information. We're actually, we've been running it for over a month now, and our rating is actually better than Delta Airlines and a lot of different companies that are like literally, you know, Fortune 500 companies, but like we're at 9 out of 10 when we're getting good, you know, feedback and positive accolades for our officers. And that's, you know, we're actually trying to put out different information just to the officers to show, hey, like this is the feedback that we're getting from community. That, hey, they highlighted, you know, you people were compassionate or empathetic. And I think that really helps the officers feel like, okay, my work is being valued. And so I do think, you know, first and foremost, say thank you, but also accommodations also resonate really well with officers. And when it comes to an OPA complaint or you know, a complaint, OPA is the avenue as well.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to wrap up the question part here. We would have get to time. I think Whitney's got some final business, but can we just give a round of applause for this?